Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. I'm always so happy, not always, but almost always so happy when I come on here and make videos. But today I am like quadruple happy. So I'm going to try and stay calm. I don't know that I'll succeed because today is my birthday. And part of how I want to celebrate it, part of how I am celebrating it is coming on here and sharing the good news that Jesus came to share and that Bruno came to clarify and remind us of. But even more than that, I'm delighted because I'm still alive. If it was not for Bruno Groening and his teachings, I'm pretty sure I would no longer be in my body. I've shared many times how bad my health was, and I probably had a year or two left to live at the most, and it was going to be a pretty miserable year or two. And through this teaching, I experienced healing after healing after healing. So I'm alive today. I'm very grateful to God and to Bruno Groening for that fact. So one thing that I'm really excited to share about today is I went to a 12-step meeting today, and I've shared a little bit about how the 12 steps are so aligned with Bruno's teachings, because it's about the process of surrendering to God, which Bruno spoke about. So I'm going to share a little wisdom that I heard today in this 12-step meeting, and so away we go. So someone and I'm paraphrasing things that were said in this meeting. So someone said that they used to be focused on just getting what they wanted, that they weren't focused on God, and they were kind of, in essence, they realized that they had been trying to control other people and control life, and that made them very unhappy. And so they started to learn to focus on God and to surrender to God and be guided by God. And that led to so much peace and so much joy and such a more meaningful life. And, this person isn't a saint. When they start to focus again on controlling life and getting their way, they said that they start to feel kind of crazy again and that they lose their serenity. And so I was so touched by this because the spiritual path is a process. In my experience, it's until you're a master, maybe. But Bruno Groening himself said, I've convinced myself of the truth, and I am busy convincing myself further. So even for someone who I certainly see as a master, apparently growth and learning still continues, which is hard to fathom. Now, the phrase surrender to God, it sounds so serious and heavy and kind of like old school religious. And that's understandable. I used to think that way too. But let's look at it from a spiritual point of view. If God is love and God is goodness, I'm utterly convinced that those two statements are true. And God is harmony. Those are all things that Bruno Groening said. And God is aliveness. And we align ourselves with that, with love, with goodness, with aliveness, with harmony. And in essence, to say, hey, I want to be guided by that. I want to live myself in alignment with that, which is another meaning of the word einstellen, to align properly. I've encouraged people many times to go to Google and ask for the English translation of einstellen. You will be shocked at the number of meanings. It's a very deep word. Tune in is just one of the meanings. And so if we're guided by goodness and love and peace, things are going to go well. And if we're not guided by those things, if we're guided by not peace, not goodness, not love, things are not going to go well. It's kind of um, I think it's just one of the facts of life. Whether you prefer, and different words will appeal to different people. Surrender to God, align yourself with God, seek guidance with God, uh, seek to live. My favorite is to seek and live inspiration, moment by moment, to be guided. Like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing you would have me do? You're infinitely wise. I'm not. Show me the way. Now, this can sound, again, this can sound like we're losing our free will. Well, Bruno Groening pointed out that God never forces anyone to do anything. We always have free will to align with God, goodness, love, life, or to align with disease, disharmony, misery, anger, fear, i.e., what Bruno called bosse, which gets translated as nastiness, viciousness, evil. God doesn't force us to align with God. If God did that, I think the world would be very different than it is right now. And Bruno talked about this, that God allowed free will to such an extent that God will allow us to literally kill the body of another person, to literally make life miserable. Bruno described God as a loving parent who, yes, will protect us if we seek God, but also will allow us to make mistakes and do, let's just say it, really horrible things. People do really horrible things. I don't know that I've done anything I would call horrible, but I've done many things that I feel deep sadness, regret, remorse. I've hurt people because, this is really wild, because God's a loving parent, gave me the gift of life, gave me the gift of free will, and is allowing me to learn. And in that learning process, I mess up. I hurt myself. I hurt others. And in other people's learning process, they mess up and they hurt me. Yet Bruno Groening pointed out that God is such a good parent that within this game of life, in this school of life, only things that serve as a lesson are allowed to happen. So when I hurt someone else or someone else hurts me, it's not meaningless. There's actually an opportunity to learn and grow. How about that for being what? I mean, talk about how great is God. What an amazing design that this life is. So I'm jazzed today, as I shared at the beginning of the video. It's my birthday. And things are flowing well in my life right now. And as I shared at the beginning, I'm alive today because of the teachings of Bruno Groening. I would almost certainly not be in this body anymore. So I'm very bubbly and happy. But let's face it, and yes, this glorious design, but let's face it, life is not easy. This game of life, this school of life, sometimes it really hurts, like really bad, like really, really bad. I've experienced it. Hi forever. I'm assuming everyone here has experienced deep pain and suffering. So I share all this so that we can have a sober and lucid understanding of the game of life, of the school of life. That pain is part of it. I believe, and I'll tie this into Bruno's teachings, that part of what we're here to learn is how to tolerate pain and not turn it into suffering, because Bruno Groening's life was quite painful. Becoming a master doesn't free you from pain. But Bruno Groening said he was able to hold on to the divine heavenly peace. And his life was very challenging and very hard. So, and Bruno spoke of life in a body on this earth as a gift, yet it doesn't always feel like a gift. Many, many times I've said to God, why'd you send me here when it gets hard? And I'm grateful, thanks to Bruno Groening, I feel now that I have answers that help me to weather the storm. Because as long as we're in a body, but my understanding is as long as I am in a body on this earth, there's going to be challenges. The spiritual life, again, my understanding, doesn't lead to meaning there's not going to be storms, but it helps me to learn to weather the storms and even learn and grow from the storms. I'm speaking metaphorically, of course. The challenges. It's a view that works because it gives a paradigm to face the challenges. Forever loving everything. I'm so grateful, glad you're here. Delightful to see you, and thank you for the birthday wishes. My birth certificate says I was born on 9:30 a.m. January the 4th, and it's just about to hit 9:30. And I asked myself, what do I want to do in that moment? I wanted to spend it with my Bruno family. I wanted to say thank you to God for the gift of my life. And thank you to Bruno Groening for coming here and enduring everything that he did. I can't even fathom how hard it was for Bruno Groening. And he endured it. And why? Because he loves us. He cares about us. He didn't come here out of any sense of obligation. Bruno Groening reported that once he, as a young child, his connection to God got very strong. At first, it maybe wasn't so strong, but it got very strong. And he was mistreated. His parents and family were very cruel to him. And he would go into the woods. And he once, deep in the woods, he's like, this just breaks me up in the best way possible. So here he is, like 5 or 6. He's run away from his family because they're being mean to him. He's in the woods and he's like, God, why did you send me here? There's so much evil. And he got an answer. And this is the answer that's moving me to tears. And the answer he heard from God is that God said to Bruno, you asked me to come. So according to Bruno Groening, God didn't ask Bruno to come here to help us. Bruno Groening asked God, can I go down there to help those people? To help my friends? Bruno Groening said that Jesus knew he would be crucified, and yet he came anyway. And it's my assumption that Bruno Groening knew all that he would have to go through, because Bruno said that God asked him, are you sure? Are you sure that you want to go? And apparently Bruno Groening was sure. And so it's hard for us to fathom what Bruno Groening went through. But he gave some hints. In one community hour, Bruno Groening said, "The level of evil that the friends bring to this community hour." So these are people who have been around Bruno, they've practiced, and they show up at the community hour, and Bruno Groening said, "I see, hear, smell, taste, and feel evil." That's why he smoked. He smoked because it helped dull the taste and dull the smell. And he said, if you could see the amount of evil that the friends bring to a community hour, you would run from the room and never come back. So Bruno Groening tolerated a level of discomfort, a level of pain and discomfort, and I'm sure disgust. Because let's face it, evil feels yucky, right? When we are in the throes, when I still get caught in anger sometimes. When I'm in anger or resentment, it feels so yucky, but I'm just feeling it. Bruno Groening smelled it, tasted it, saw it, and heard it. I cannot even fathom. I assume to some extent he did that every moment of every day. I'm sure he got maybe moments of relief here and there. And he did it for like almost 60 years. So I can understand that intellectually, but I cannot fathom what it was like, what he went through. Towards the end of his earthly life, he showed one of the friends an x-ray of himself, because as you know, once they banned him from healing, his health started to decline rapidly. And he went to a doctor and they did x-rays. And he showed to one of the friends, he showed an x-ray. And there were two black spots. One of them was really big and one of them was kind of small. And very nonchalantly, Bruno Groening said, "Oh, the small one, that's just some illness that I took on from the friends." So Bruno would take on people's illnesses and burn it up inside his body. This was so real that it would show up on an x-ray. So it's like, that's not a problem. He still had to bear it. I'm sure it was still uncomfortable. And he did it over and over and over and over again. Who knows how many tens of thousands of times. And tens of thousands might be a conservative estimate, because he just didn't do this for the people close to him. He did this for strangers. People would just come, to the Trapperhof, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people, and he would just take it on, burn it up, and then he'd take on more. So in this x-ray, again, that was the small spot. And the big spot, he said, this, however, I forget his exact words, but it was something along the effects of, this is other people's attacks and judgments and of me. And he had to endure that. And apparently, to some extent, he could give away the illnesses he took on, but the people's hatred and the evil they would send via attack, apparently that was, I don't claim to understand. I'm just sharing what he shared. So I don't want to put Bruno on a pedestal because he never wanted that, but I do want to have proper respect for him and what he did for us. And so again, the level of evil that he experienced moment by moment, especially in community hours, he said, if any one of us experienced it, we would run away and we would never come back. And he experienced that over and over and over and over. Why did he do it? Because he cared and he loved us and he wanted to help. Who can fathom such a thing? And to know in advance that this was going to happen. If I said to you, hey, I need help. Could you please come over to my house? But as soon as you walk in the door, you are going to be assailed by the forces of Satan. You are going to feel nauseous. You're going to hear the nastiest things you've ever heard. You're going to be able to smell it. You're going to see the most disgusting things that you can even fathom, the most foul, putrid. You're going to see, hear, smell, feel, and taste it. Could you please come on over and help? And it's so horrible, it'll probably drive you crazy. If you stay too long, if you stay more than a few seconds, it'll drive you crazy. Could you please come over and hang out for an hour? Who of us could do that? If you asked that of me, I would say, I really want to. I don't think I can. Who of us could do that for a minute, much less an hour or a day or a year? And that's what Bruno Groening did for you and for me and for humanity. He said, my life is not my own. I forget the next part, I believe it's, I'm here for humankind. My life belongs to humankind. But not only did his life belong here for humankind, so did his comfort. So when speaking about the birth of Christ, Bruno Groening said, why did Christ come? Why did God send Christ? And he said, you precisely don't I'm paraphrasing, but almost exact. You precisely don't understand because you don't understand the meaning of your own birth. So I believe I'm starting to understand why God gave me a human life and why God gives each of us a human life. And I believe it's twofold. It's to grow spiritually and it's to help. No more and no less. Now, I can't speak to the kind of learning that a being such as Jesus or a being such as Bruno, I can guess, but Bruno hinted at it. And sometimes he directly said, Bruno said, I have convinced myself of the truth. I'm convincing myself further. He also said, no one can understand the temptation I have had to resist. So not only was this evil attacking Bruno, it was constantly trying to pull him off the divine path. And yet he didn't. In my view, he didn't get pulled off. So maybe that's the learning that Bruno Groening. But isn't that what we are all here to learn? Bruno Groening, obviously much more intense, but aren't all of us? And Bruno Groening said that evil constantly is trying to pull us off of the good path. All of us. I say the level of temptation Bruno Groening faced is what you and I face times 1,000. So on my birthday, I'm going to be exploring gratitude and reflecting, why am I here? And again, I think I have answers, and I'm going to sit with those answers. But here's another interesting one. This has been coming to me lately. Bruno said, I want all of you to become masters of life. And Bruno Groening spoke about a book called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. And he encouraged everyone to read it. So what if we're not just here to grow spiritually and to serve, but what if we are here to grow and serve on a scale that we can't even fathom, to become like Bruno Groening? Bruno didn't just hint at such things, he directly said it. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow or even in this lifetime. What I can say is that that's what Bruno said he wanted of us, to become masters of life. And Bruno directly said, you can do what I do. You're just like me. You don't just believe, you don't believe enough yet, and you don't do it yet. And he pointed us towards these books, The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, which talk about the fact that we're all on the path to mastery. And that it's a process. And as I shared at the beginning, sometimes a very challenging, painful process. Experts in Business wrote, Happy New Year, sending you love and healing. Thank you, Helen. Yes, because Bruno Groening said, you need to convince yourself of the truth so that you can help your neighbor. We're told to love our neighbor as ourselves. That's written in the Bible, but what does that mean? To just have positive feelings towards them? Well, Bruno said that we need to free ourselves from evil and understand that so that we can help others become free from evil. As Bruno said, to free the purely divine soul from the clutches of Satan's grasp. That is what by this, I understand he meant his work, is really all about. Thank you so very much for joining in. I was not expecting to cry my eyes out, but I did. I really started to feel the magnitude of what Bruno Groening went through to help all of us. Let's sit in silence for a few minutes. I wish everyone a blessed day. I'm very grateful for your time and attention and for celebrating my true birthday with me. Big love. Thank you, Shelley. You're welcome.